Am I the asshole for refusing to change my last name? My mother passed away before I was 10. My uncle, mother's elder brother, took me in and raised me because my father by then had already started a new life and a new family. My uncle treated me very well, though I'm not sure if my aunt feels the same about me as he did. My uncle and aunt had only one son who's around my age, and what he had, I had it too. For example, if my uncle got my cousin a laptop, he would get me one too, and they would be the same worth. My uncle even got me a car for my 18th birthday. My cousin also treated me just like his own brother. Needless to say, I'm very grateful to have them in my life. Everything I have that I am is owed to them. However, my relationship with my uncle has hit a slight snag recently. My culture is usually the parents who will help with purchasing a home for their sons until they get married. The reason is because people in my culture tend to marry young, but most of the time we would not have worked long enough to save up for the entire down payment. For a man not to have a marital home is considered a disadvantage, and the woman's family may not accept the proposed union, so a man having a marital home is very important. In my case, because my mother has passed away and my father is an absent parent, my uncle and aunt are my de facto parents. Indeed, my uncle said he would buy me a marital home. However, he has set a condition for that. I have to change my last name to his. Last names are a big deal in my culture, so this is not something that is taken lightly. My uncle said since he's been like a father to me rather than my own father, and also as a remembrance to my mother, I should change my last name to his, which is also my mother's. So basically, no change in last name equals no marital home. I expressed to him that this is an unfair demand because, like I said, last names are a huge deal in my culture, and change could trigger uncomfortable questions for people. The group of close friends whom I've confided in told me that I'm the asshole. I'm surprised by their reaction because other than this, I've never gone against my uncle. I'm also very grateful to my uncle and what he has done for me, and I would gladly take up the responsibility alongside my cousin to take care of him in his old age. It is just that I really don't think I should be forced into making a fundamental identity change and be punished for not doing it. Am I the asshole? I can't sleep in the same room as my boyfriend when I'm at your house? Fine, we won't sleep there. I was a recent college graduate who made the immoral choice to move in with a boyfriend without getting married. We moved in together in another state, about a 6-hour drive from my parents, who lived about 2 hours away from the boyfriend's parents. When we came back to visit, my parents made us sleep in separate rooms and beds because we weren't married. After a visit or two like this, Christmas holiday rolled around. We were planning to be in the state for the whole week between Christmas and New Year's, splitting the time between the two families. We start by spending 2 nights at my parents', then around dinner time the third day, we leave to head to his parents'. My parents are surprised and confused that we are not staying longer. They expected us to split the time evenly. My reply, well, at his parents' house, we get to sleep together, so we want to spend the night there. Bye. Before the next visit, they let us know that they have decided that since we are a committed couple, they will allow us to share a room even though we are not married.
Am I wrong for canceling the plans for Thanksgiving after my parents called my brother's baby their first grandchild? I, 32 female, have been with my wife Ava, 34 female, for 8 years now, but we've been married for 5. She was a single mom of 3 kids when we started dating. She had 2 daughters, now 10 and 12, and a son, now 16. I've watched these kids grow up. I've read the bedtime stories, done bath time, the first days of school, PTA meetings, all of it. I very much consider them to be my kids, and they've been calling me mom for almost 6 years now. My brother Ivan, 28 male, just had a baby girl with his fiancée Sarah, 27 female. I love my niece, and my kids adore their cousin. My kids have been the only grandchildren on my side of the family since Ava and I got together, and there's never been a moment where my kids and my wife were treated like they didn't belong. My brother is their uncle, my mom and dad are their nana and pop. The kids see my family as their family, and I always thought that my family felt the same way about them. The kids and I were over at my brother's house just hanging out, and my parents ended up dropping by with gifts for my niece. Ivan laughed when he saw the toys and told my mom and dad that they're going to end up spoiling her rotten. My mom said since my niece is their first grandchild, of course they have to spoil her. My kids were sitting in the living room, and all of us and my youngest daughter looked hurt when she realized what my mother said. My son and my 12-year-old didn't fully react to it, but I could tell it bothered the both of them so. Sarah spoke up and said, "Oh, you mean first grandbaby, not first grandchild." My dad shook his head and replied that my niece was their first grandchild. I didn't want my kids to keep sitting there and listening to that, so I handed my son my keys and told him to wait in the car with his sisters. When they were gone, I asked my parents why the hell they'd say that my kids weren't their grandchildren, and my mom said they couldn't be their grandchildren because they weren't really my children. My wife and I were going to be hosting Thanksgiving at our house this year, but I told my parents that if they didn't view my kids as their family, then they could just host a meal at their own house with their real family while I spent the holiday with mine. I left before they could say anything else to me, and my wife and I reiterated to the children that they will always be my kids and I will always be their other mom, regardless of our DNA. My brother is pissed at me now because he thinks I reacted too harshly and that I should try to see where my parents are coming from. My mom texted saying that she and my dad love the kids, but they still aren't their grandchildren, and she hopes that we can come to understand that because she doesn't want this to ruin my niece's first Thanksgiving. I haven't replied back. I meant what I said, but I'm worried that maybe I'm reacting too harshly.
Just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. I met my boyfriend at the gym. Yeah, I know. Terrible idea. You can say it was lust at first sight. From the moment we saw each other at the gym, we couldn't take our eyes off each other. He came straight up to me at the gym and told me that he really liked me. But I was super shy. He was just some random guy I was meeting at the gym. But he was all about me. He asked me for my number and I said no. He asked me for my Instagram and I said no. For the next 2 weeks, he would come into the gym at exactly the same time I did. I would basically go work out whenever I had my lunch break. So of course, he would show up then. Of course, slowly but surely, he would charm me. He would even bring me lunch. After about 2 weeks, I finally gave him my phone number. That's when he asked me to go have breakfast, which I thought was weird. Should have been the first red flag, right? This was his excuse. He said he worked nights, but that his schedule would change all the time. So this meant that he would sometimes work during the day or at night. It was just random. So we went to breakfast. Here's the second red flag. He asked me if we could have breakfast 40 minutes away from where we lived. We both lived near the gym. Of course, I thought this was strange, but I said sure. He picked me up, and the whole time at breakfast, he kept looking at his phone. Part 2 is up. I just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. For our first date, we went to have breakfast 40 minutes away from where we both lived. Again, this was another red flag I ignored. During the breakfast, he was on his phone the entire time, and I called him out on it. I asked him why he invited me to breakfast if he was going to be on his phone all day. That's when he made up this whole sob story about how hard his work life was, how he was always stuck to his phone answering emails and text messages from his boss. And of course I believed it. I mean, I didn't know this guy from anything. After that, he put his phone down, and I realized he was the most amazing man I had ever met. A man that can make me laugh is really important to me. And we laughed the entire time. We were telling each other jokes. We talked about family and values. We talked about our favorite foods, countries we wanted to go to, places we had been to. It was the perfect date. We even loved the same type of music, and our favorite movie was the same. So as you can imagine, I completely fell head over heels for this man. But the red flags continued. A week after our first date, he asked me to be his girlfriend. Did I say yes? Of course I did. But this was just another red flag. He began love bombing me and always wanted to be with me. But he never invited me over to his place. Part 3 is up. I just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. Every time I'd ask to go over to his place, he would say no. First off, he told me that he had a terrible roommate, that his roommate was noisy and really dirty and the apartment stank. So for that reason, he didn't want me to come over. And of course I said, yeah, that's fine. Here's the fourth red flag that I ignored. He would ask to come over to my apartment at odd hours. Sometimes he wanted to come over at 3 in the morning. Sometimes he wanted to come over super early. And other times he wanted to come over really late. Because I have a 9-to-5 job, I kept saying no. I needed to get my beauty sleep, please. But even if I said no, he would still come over. Here's the fifth red flag. He would come over to my apartment and instantly fall asleep on the couch. I was always asking him why he was so tired, and he would just say that it was too much work. Well, we've been dating now for 2 months. A few days ago, I started getting suspicious of his situation, so I showed up to his apartment, but he didn't live there. It was an office building. I asked him to come over and I confronted him. That's when he confessed that he is married, and that he's been married for 10 years, but he says that his wife is a nightmare and that he wants to divorce her. What should I do?
Did you know that The Purge was based on a true story? The Purge is a 2013 film where once a year all crime is allowed for a 12-hour time period. As terrifying as it sounds, the horror movie was inspired by a real-life event that took place in 217 BC. This week-long event was called Saturnalia and was celebrated by ancient Romans from December 17th to December 25th. People were encouraged to drink, do whatever they wanted, including sacrificing each other to the gods. Throughout the week, businesses and work would close, with slaves given the freedom to say and do what they'd like without being arrested. Even though this was exciting for many ancient Romans, it often got super dark when people took things too far. The story even reveals that during this event, fake kings would be crowned and given the power to order people to do anything they wanted. But at the end of the celebration, these kings would be sacrificed as a show of respect for the Roman god. Many believe that the purge may take place again in the future. What do you guys think?
Emma Dazzle for calling out someone who slept with our boss. She was a coworker, and she has never been really nice. She's always trying to get ahead and get that next promotion. Overall, just a really mean, evil person. There's been many occasions where she's gotten me in trouble for very little stuff that she'll blow out of proportion, along with trying to just knock everyone down. She's also really pretty and a huge flirt. I recently saw her outside of work, and she didn't even recognize me or see me, and I overheard her talking to one of her friends about how she's about to get a new promotion. She said that she slept with our boss and that now it's promised. I was really shocked, and I try not to laugh when I heard this because it's something that just sounded like she would do.
Anyways, and the next couple days, lo and behold, she was promoted. I went to the person above my boss and just kind of told him everything. He investigated it and saw emails confirming what I saw. Oh, was I the asshole?